All right, so we are back. We are going to discuss the last few groups that we've had. We've got a couple different people that reached out and gave us some feedback and testimonials of what they experienced, what they felt, what's happened since the group, and we're going to talk about it and get Deborah's insight into everything that they felt on their end, what she can remember feeling on her end from these sessions, and we'll get into it. So all right, so the
Okay.
first one we've got, let's get ready. She says, this is from Julia. She says, thank you so much for the beautiful session you held for the group. I should have emailed about my experience sooner, but still wanted to share what I could remember. During the actual live session prior to listening to the recording, I was feeling so much energy and bliss moving all through me like waves. The first biggest validation was when I heard you mention the spiritual or psychic surgeons right away. I had no idea that you'd be working with them directly, and there was a point where possibly 20 minutes in, give or take, I had this sudden inner knowing, and I said to myself, oh, the surgeons are here. And I knew that they were prepping me on the table and then going over my organs afterward. I also had a profound message come to me during the session that was just point blank, God wants me to be healthy. You also mentioned some type of nurturing feminine energy close to the end, and if I remember correctly, uh, which is very interesting because I did sense more of a masculine energy holding space and protection for most of the session. But then near the end, I had this image as if it suddenly switched up a bit, and a female presence came above my head from where I was laying and swooped her hands underneath my shoulders and back to pull me closer toward her lap. I felt this was the nourishing energy of Mother Gaia. Thank you once again. I feel so blessed to have shared this experience with you.
You know what I find so interesting with that is how each person has a different image of what comes to them. And so many people ask me, like, well, who is God? And God comes in many forms. And to me, God is love. And for her, God came in so many forms for her to hold her. And she felt it, physically felt it. And that's just undeniable. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that she felt also like a specific moment where the energy changed from the masculine presence to the female presence, which I thought was like super fascinating. And I loved that she felt that the spiritual surgeons were there, like before she even listened to the recording.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Like spiritual surgeons do show up in all of my group healing sessions.
Mhm.
It depends on what I'm going to see. You know, sometimes I'll actually see the image of them, feel the energy shift, like she explained. When God enters the room, there's a different energy. It's almost makes me weep every time.
Mhm.
When a loved one comes into the room, I'll feel that shift, and you just can feel, okay, there's a female or a male. So it's fascinating to hear that while the session was taking place, she was feeling those things too.
Yeah, before she even listened. All right, so this next one. Hi, Deborah. Thanks so much for the healing. It's impressive. There's absolutely change. During the healing in the evening, my time, my body felt heavy. I had difficulties to move. Afterwards, I felt hopeful and light and open, and my headache was gone. I was tired. I slept well. In the morning, I had heavy legs, like after a fever, and felt lightheaded, but good. I listened to the healing, and it was very touching for me. I cried. I also had an insight about neediness. It became very, very clear to me. There was so much love. I will for sure listen many, many times. Thank you so much.
Okay, so it's wonderful that she said she's going to listen to it more than once
Mhm.
because we always tell people you're going to hear things differently. The energy never changes its essence or power, but she cried during it. That's the sense of releasing. She totally just let herself go and felt it. And she also felt tired afterwards. So that sometimes people do. And if you do, you honor your body or your feelings. Sometimes God wants you to feel to heal. You have to feel exhausted.
Mhm.
Sometimes people feel nothing. So each individual is different.
Yeah, I love this too because she listened to it. She didn't listen to it till the next day because she lives on the other side of the world. So it was nighttime as the healing took place. So she had all these feelings just when she knew it was happening, but she didn't listen to it until the next morning. And so that's really, I think that's kind of cool because that night she felt open and light and her headache was gone and she was tired, but she slept really well. And that's all before she even listened to the session.
And that's fascinating too, because then you know how we're really connected as one in that moment. And she could be living, I don't know where she's from, but she could be living across the world. And whether she's sleeping or whether she's resting, it doesn't matter. Time doesn't matter. That energy travels.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Okay, so the next one's from Steve, and he says, "Thank you for the beautiful healing. I felt the energy run through me and had pain in my head and a headache, but I knew this was all part of the healing. I was so surprised to listen to the recording post the healing and hear how you too felt pain in your head and a headache. I felt at peace and incredibly calm throughout the healing. It was incredible, and I had tears rolling down my face as I felt the energy surge through my body. Thank you for this beautiful experience."
So I will feel pain during the sessions. And so like he described, the pain in the head. I don't know, when spirit, when God, when the spiritual surgeons are working, no matter where they're working, that's the gift I receive of feeling. Afterwards, it's no longer a part of me, so I'm not feeling this pain. But to have this extreme pain in the head and then have somebody email back and say, I had that same feeling, without a shadow of a doubt, that was touched.
Yeah. I love it, Steve. All right, so this one was someone that we gave a scholarship to for this group healing session. So she said, "Hi Debra, thank you so much for gifting me that healing. Oh, I have purged many emotions since and have not needed to use the pain medication as I was before. Also, many cravings have vanished. You are such an excellent channel of God's light and speak His grace so eloquently. During the healing, I fell right asleep and have during the 2 times I've tried listening to it, which is nice because sleeping has been very difficult for me. I am proud to have been helped by you."
Um, we receive a lot of emails that say, "Oh my gosh, I can't even get through it. The first 10 minutes, I'm out."
Yeah.
And that's a sedation that God gives you. He wants you to be totally out to receive. And sometimes they'll listen to the second time. I got it 5 minutes longer. And eventually they make it through it. But what else did she say in the beginning about she felt the love?
Well, she said that she's purged many emotions
That's
and has
good.
not needed to use the pain medication as she was before, and also many cravings vanished.
So that's interesting because sometimes I've heard several times where God will say, "I'm going to change your addictions, your cravings, and you won't crave them, you won't have a taste for them. In fact, they're gonna be like disgusting to you, or that you have the strength not to have them, or you just know you don't need them." And that's amazing that happened to her immediately.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got another one from a woman named Angela. So she says, "It's taken me much longer for a full response than I wanted. I keep falling asleep, which doesn't help." And she has talking about that people have this problem often, and myself included. She says, "You mentioned that you found yourself absent-mindedly picking up a foot and massaging the sole of the foot and kind of noticing you were doing it and wondering about it. You observed that you don't usually do that. Strangely, in the week or so before the session, I found myself doing the same thing, being drawn to massage that part of my foot, not knowing why and wondering about it. My state of mind was exactly as you described, and it's not a normal thing for me to do. My feet weren't even sore."
So that was such a powerful moment for me.
Yeah.
And I'm in the session, and when I'm laying down, the information is just flowing through me. Meanwhile, I'm just doing this, bringing my foot up and doing this, but I have no idea. And all of a sudden, I'm channeling everything in, and I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I rubbing my foot? There's no pain there. Like, why am I doing this? And so it was like, I clicked from wait, recognize what you're doing, spoke about it, saying, my conscious mind wasn't even there, wasn't even conscious why I was doing it. And I didn't think it was going to have any meaning to anyone. So that's what's really profound. It's like, just say everything that you're receiving, because that was so pivotal for her. And when I read it, I was like, what?
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
good reminder for you to like always say what you're, even the things that are just seem inconsequential or random.
Yeah,
Like that happens all the time where you'll be like, I don't know, but I'm just gonna say it. This is really odd. And then someone's like, oh my gosh, I have that or whatever it might be.
well, you're right. And sometimes things are happening so fast, it's hard to get it all out.
Mhm.
And so I have to pause. It's like, okay, spiritual surgeons, okay, spirit, okay, God, we just need to pause a second. Hold off. I gotta say this. And then we go
Then
on.
resume.
Yeah.
Okay, and then she says, then in another part of the session, you mentioned bubbles in the abdominal area. A few days after the session, I had a night when I was at work on my own where my stomach and intestines were gurgling all night with a lot of loose stools. It really felt like bubbles moving around, and I've never experienced anything like that before.
I don't think I've ever mentioned it like that. I can vividly remember feeling and saying they just felt like bubbles popping, like moving in the abdomen.
So
And it
interesting.
wasn't like a gurgle, because normally you say, oh, I have gurgling or I have an upset stomach. It literally felt like bubbles. So the fact that I used that term and it was once again so profound for her.
Mhm. She says, it feels to me like in the space where the session happens, time is fluid. The past is now and the future is now, which is what we were just talking about. Like, it's not, it's otherworldly. It's not of our time constraints or our time construct. It's, it goes beyond that.
It does. And God's always saying too, try not to stay in your past. So many of us judge our past. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have went down that path. Let that all go, because it got you to where you are today and there's opportunities for growth. And then we look so much to our future. What do I want? What do I desire? And it's okay to have goals, but don't forget to be present in the now. And when we were just present in that moment where time didn't exist, they were able to just be and receive.
Mhm. She says, as far as how I've been since the session, despite some potentially stressful situations at work, I've been less stressed than I usually have been. I feel more grounded and less easily knocked out of my emotional center. It feels like I'm on a path of constant improvement in my physical and mental health and healthcare without the changes being really dramatic or sudden. My son got his driver's license finally last week. He's just turned 30 this year. So that's a huge thing to achieve. There was a mental block that's been cleared there too, and allowing a move toward independence and letting go.
I love that her son also received, because part of her things that were stuck within her, holding on to and wanting to be the best mom and worry and concern, that was one of the things that she needed healed so she could heal. And so it went together as one.
Like once she released it, he could release it.
Yeah, and vice versa. Then all of a sudden, he did this and then she's healed too. It goes hand in hand. And God knew exactly what needed to be done. But the fact that that all transpired together as a unit, how beautiful.
And that's happened quite often, like in a session where one person's in the session, but it ends up affecting their entire family, which is we all affect each other, our energy and how we relate to each other and our own personal issues and struggles. When those aren't healed and how that affects everyone else. That's just like the perfect example of how we're always, energy is always flowing between people. And if you have things that are unhealed or stuck or trauma or anything like that, it can cause a lot of blockages. And
Well, just imagine somebody entering in the room, you can feel their energy if they're angry. And if they're always angry because they're upset with themselves or they don't like how life is treating them, you can feel that, and that goes on to everybody. But when you shift that and you're able to remove those blockages and shed all of that, we shed it, we get rid of it, we throw it away, we give it to God. It not only heals us, it heals the entire house.
yeah,
I love that.
okay, so I love this one from Hannah. She said, hi, holy moly, I got the dates wrong. I nearly burst with excitement getting this email. So this was the email when we sent out the recording of the session right after it was finished. I thought it was a Friday and wondered why everyone was treating me extra nice. I was getting texts saying you're a great friend. My son was being super nice, saying he loves me. He hasn't done that in a long time. I was thinking, surely can't be the healing already. Is this a quantum leap thing? Why is everyone being so nice? Thank you so much. I will update soon. So yeah, she thought that it was gonna be the next day, so she wasn't even aware that the session happened. And as the day was happening, and she's having all this positive energy, all these people are being super nice, and she's thinking like, what? This session's not even supposed to be till tomorrow.
I just thought that was like the best. It's like when she had least expected it and she was witnessing it.
Yeah. Not knowing like, oh,
Yeah.
the healing's happening
Yeah,
now.
because so many of us are like, oh, what do I have to do on my end? You know, what should I do? And there's nothing you need to do. It will just unfold how it's supposed to for you.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
a perfect example.
right, where she's like, but I wanted to light candles and I was gonna meditate and what? It already
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
And she didn't need to.
And she still felt it, which is really cool.
That was really, I thought that one too.
All right, so this one's from Nikki, and she says, "Hi Deborah, thank you so much for your healing energy. I enjoyed the session very much. I would like to share with you a few things I experienced, but most of all, I'm so very grateful that I was able to be a part of such a special healing. Thank you to the moon and back. The session came in the nick of time. About 2 days ago, I had a seizure while I was getting ready for work. I can't say for sure because I was alone and woke up in bed confused. I was so frustrated because I haven't had one since October. I continued my day in a daze on adrenaline, and when I got home from work, I felt nauseated and my head began to ache. It was so bad I couldn't eat, I couldn't listen to anyone talk, and I felt sympathetic for anyone that experiences frequent migraines. It was unbearable. The ache was all over my cranium and continued until this morning, up until the beginning of the healing session. Once the session was over, it felt as if the ache had just disappeared. At one point, I felt waves passing throughout my body, top to bottom, along with the beat of a heart. My hands tingled as if energy was coming through. I do carry ache in my right neck and shoulder. That's where I carry my stress. During after the session, I noticed that the weight I was carrying began to disappear. You mentioned thyroid in the beginning. My chihuahua sitting next to me takes meds for his thyroid. His name is Peter. We're medicine buddies. It was humbling to think that he was touched. When loved ones came to visit, I couldn't resonate with just one. Everyone seemed to pop into mind's eye, but I will say that the lay hit home. Throughout the session, I felt calm and at ease, a sense of warmth and care. Your words gave me the ability to put trust in God's hands so that I can create my own sense of purpose.
It's just also beautiful.
I know.
You know, with her feeling in the hands, it's the one thing I always tell people, keep your hands open. Even if you're meditating, right? Hands are receivers. And so I say, when we get into the session, we're gonna keep our palms facing up and allow that energy to go through. So she felt it. And then you can place it anywhere on your body that you want to after for like an extra reboot. But the fact that her head felt better, that's just, I mean, I felt so bad when I read that she had what she thought was a seizure.
Yeah.
And then she feels better.
I love the chihuahua.
Yeah, that was cute. That just says, you know, like they're one, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
God's like, okay, well, the dog's probably taken on a lot for her. Let's like heal the dog too at the same time.
So cute. Oh, it's so adorable. Yeah, and then and so she was talking about that during she couldn't resonate with just one loved one because in the sessions you can talk about this with the lay and everything.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so God took us to another dimension. And in that dimension, he's like, your loved one's going to be there. And so she couldn't just see one, she was seeing many. And that often happens. It might just not be one. You might have many that show up for you.
Mhm.
And it's beautiful. You're being embraced. You can see them, you can smell them, you can feel them. But we were all there waiting, and all of a sudden I see this lei being put on, like a Hawaiian lei.
Mhm.
I was like, what? And I had to question, like, what's this about? And it was a symbolism of celebration. And so we were celebrating what was transpiring in that healing for each other.
That's so cool.
It's beautiful.
Super unique.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, like okay. Denise. Hi Deborah, thanks so much for the healing. My experience was that I felt sedated, like you mentioned, for the entire treatment. When I listened later in the afternoon, I slept again. I didn't feel anything in particular other than the tranquility, but I did feel fabulous afterwards and very peaceful. Thank you so much for being out here in the world. I also enjoyed that you shared with us how it is that you pray to God.
Okay, so two things. She didn't feel anything during the session. Some people do, some people don't. it doesn't mean she didn't receive. I mean, look, she was feeling
She did feel
sedated.
peace
Yeah,
and
she did feel
tranquility.
peace. But she didn't feel any of the sensations of the areas that I was working in, or God was working in, or the spiritual surgeons were working in. And that's okay. Not everybody feels anything. Some people won't feel nothing and have a miraculous healing.
Mhm.
So there's no right or wrong way to receive at all.
Yeah, and then I think it's cool that she liked that you ended up giving advice about how it is that you pray to God. So at some point during the session, you must have.
Yeah, I like to tell people that, okay, so when I go into a session, some people will share with me what they're dealing with. Some people don't want to share anything at all. So I take that picture, and if you said something, I'll read it exactly how you wrote it, you know, like, I'm struggling with cancer, I have thyroid, I have, and they're saying I have.
Mhm.
Then I go back in and I say, thank you, God, for healing the thyroid. Thank you, God, for healing the cancer. Thank you, God, for curing this. I'm giving gratitude standing in it rather than saying, I have this. Could you take this from me? No, no, no. We're going to say, thank you for taking it away from me. So it's a different way of praying. If we stand in our truth and we stand in it with gratitude, giving gratitude to God, I believe God's like a yes man. So, like, if I say, oh gosh, I don't have any money. No, you don't.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm not feeling well. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But if you say, God, thank you, I'm feeling better, you're gonna feel better.
yeah.
It's just a positive, it
The
also,
power of
the
mind
power to
and.
mind, the power of putting it out there, it's power of what you want from God, instead of saying, I have this, thank you for what you're giving me.
Mhm. Yep. Okay, so we've got two more here. So this is from one of our regulars. So she's in our group sessions almost every session, or at least every couple sessions, for what, a year?
A little over a year, and it's fascinating to see her growth. It's also
Mhm.
fascinating to see how, you know, she's coming to each session and she's seeing the difference of each session.
Mhm.
And so she's saying, wow, I got this from this session, I got this from this session. And I love her feedback because it's showing me how each one is different as well.
And they're building on each other, which is really cool. So she says, thank you again, and thank God for this wonderful distant healing session. Wow, it's amazing how so many things that were mentioned were so spot on, as usual, right? Asking God to rebalance the body to a healthy state is now my main prayer. I give gratitude to God for all that transpired and gratitude to you for facilitating these profound experiences. When the healing first started, I grew increasingly cold as the surgery room, and felt absolutely pinned down. Then after about 45 minutes, I felt a weightless feeling as if I was floating, a very nice sensation. Then when listening to the recording, you mentioned you felt like you were floating when all the stuff not serving us was evaporating or being sucked out from the body. Wow. Thank you so much, Debra, for offering these beautiful things. I'm so grateful to you.
So that's interesting. In a healing session, I never know what's going to transpire. In this one, there was a point where I couldn't move. It literally was like, okay, I can't move anything. And so it can feel like at first you're aware of it and go, okay, you know, like, if you think too much of it, you might get claustrophobic, but I want to move it, and you're going to try to, you know, force it instead of just letting go. Otherwise, you're resisting what's coming.
Right.
So when we let go, even though we can't move, then we floated and we lifted, and we went to a space where the body was being healed and we were receiving in another space. It was beautiful.
I love that she felt that same exact feeling and then listened to it and validated what she felt.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, we're on the last one. So she says, I re-listened to this recording this morning and was blown away by all the insights that you received from me that I didn't hear until today. For whatever reason, I did not hear them when I listened for the first time, but given how blatant they are, I don't know how I could have missed them. I feel they were definitely for me. I've had a variety of different healers tell me I have a lot of trauma trapped in my body. I've recognized that, and over the years have sought help and have been working on releasing it and forgiving it. It's a bit of an archaeological excavation of the soul. I love that. The deeper one digs, the more one finds. Some of the specifics you mentioned that I felt were for me. You spoke of someone being lashed with a belt. This was me as a little girl of about 5 or 6. My dad worked nights, so had to sleep during the day. I was in my bedroom next to his and made a noise of some sort that woke him up. He came out of his room in a rage. I hid under the bed, but he dragged me out and whipped me with his belt. I was small and the belt wrapped around my body so that the welts were on my back and sides. When my mother discovered what he had done, she threatened to take us children and leave him. He never did it again, but I was truly traumatized by it.
You never know what's gonna come through. And I get these visions. And that vision was of a child being bit, hit with a belt. And so I shared that. And I can remember, I can't get the words exactly because they weren't mine, but God saying, this was how that person was feeling. You did nothing wrong. That was their shame that they're putting on you. For her to release it and to let it go, to stand in knowing that all along this was his stuff, not hers. But when I saw the vision, it affected me. Like I had tears. And even when you read it, it affects me and I have tears that anyone would have to go through that. But it just shows you that the words that come through are so profound and so accurate that and life-changing. They're just life-changing. And I was in awe with that.
Yeah. She says, the other thing is, you mentioned that your eyelids felt heavy, like they were glued shut. Well, that too was me. My paternal grandmother was a very difficult person, to say the least. My younger sister and I were left overnight with her and my grandfather. Before bed that night, my grandmother told us a story about the Sandman. Excuse me. About the Sandman who would come at night and if we were bad girls, he would glue our eyelids shut. If we were good girls, of course, this wouldn't happen. In retrospect, I think she drugged us with something to make us sleep. When I woke up, my eyelids were indeed glued shut, as were my sister's. I quickly rubbed my eyes and got the gritty glue off and got my sister to do the same. When my grandmother came to wake us up, she was shocked to find that our eyes weren't glued shut, and we declared ourselves good girls, much to her chagrin. Subsequently, my grandmother labeled me a witch because I always seemed to avoid her traps. From even a very young age, I could see she was someone to be wary of and not trusted. However, the label did a lot of harm, and superstitious relatives tended to believe it and treat me as such. She even had a faith healer try to exorcise me. I was a very sensitive child, and empathic and very good with animals, but for sure not a witch.
I can remember, and this has never happened in any other session, where I've voiced, I feel like my eyes are glued shut. And they were like, literally, you couldn't open them.
Yeah.
And so I said those words. I feel like somebody had their eyes glued shut.
And what a crazy thing.
Like, well, to think that who would ever have that, right? I mean, that's so far out there.
Yes.
But that's exactly what I was feeling. That's exactly what I was being told. That's what was coming through me. And it was to give her the love, to let her know that she was not what she was labeled as.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the rest of it. I just knew this part of it, with the belt and then the eyes. And I didn't know it went to one person because it could also have meaning to somebody else as well. But to receive that type of feedback, it's just, it's like you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah. No.
You just can't.
Well, it's interesting that it was her paternal grandmother. So it's her dad's mom.
Right.
And so like how interesting that cycle of trauma likely clearly went from the grandmother to her father to her. So she, not only was receiving the backlash from her father, who probably also had issues from his own childhood, but also his mother.
Right, and then we were able to break those cords so it doesn't go any further. And to hear that, I mean, what a courageous woman she is, her and her sister. But to hear that she's doing well now is beautiful.
Mm. She says, in general, despite how hard I tried to be, quote, good, and I was being actively sabotaged by many around me, and so in an attempt to protect myself, I became even more focused on being good, getting the highest marks in school, being the most helpful, and the least trouble. I felt safer when I could take control of the situation. When you said, quote, being confused about why someone who was supposed to love me was hurting me, that rang very, very true.
See, God knows us and he knows what we need. And for him to say those words, I say him, it's him, her, whatever you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
But for God to come through with such specific words for her and for the group, how healing is that?
And yes, and then she says, after discovering these in the recording this morning, so these kind of specifics that she caught, I felt like a weight has been lifted off me. I feel happier than I have in a long time. I do believe that trapped traumas have not only blocked my efforts to heal, but probably caused the left breast issues in the first place. I feel God gave you these messages for me, and through hearing them, I feel validated and loved by God, and now truly have faith that my healing is happening.
It doesn't get better than that.
Like,
I mean, it
amen.
makes you want to cry. I could just say that how profound these group sessions are. They really are.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff that comes through,
Mhm.
and we're all holding each other as one around the world. We're gathering with the same intention. When one is healed, we are all healed.
Mhm.
And some healings might happen instantaneously and some might take time, but we're seeing the transformation. We're hearing the feedback.
Mhm.
And I'm just so grateful to be able to do these
Yeah, it's
for
just so
people.
great to be like in that space where you can feel everyone's energy all together as a collective.
Yeah,
That's just so beautiful.
that touched me.
I know, these are good ones. I'm excited for the next one. Our next group is on March 1st. Yes, Friday, March 1st. So we will do another one after that.
I know, and I'm honored to not only share this feedback,
Yeah.
and I got the goosebumps saying that,
Yeah.
but I'm really honored to be able to be the vessel and instrument to do these for people worldwide. And there isn't one, that has been better
Mhm.
or hasn't had enough.
Mhm.
And until you experience it, do you understand the level of healing that can be done? So thank you for bringing that and let's share it. Yeah. Thank you for listening, guys.
Thank you.